Greetings, Inquisitors. Welcome to the Holocron. This is Week 8 in the Rise of Obticeo. I started this account on January 1st. You can follow along each week as I do these updates for entertainment and advice. This week we've got a lot of progress to show, as well as a long discussion about how to plan out some of your early teams if you want to be very successful in the new Grand Arena system. With that in mind, let's go see what happened with the account. First thing I like to do is put stars on characters that we're farming. So we're going to go ahead and upgrade Piett a little bit here. Give him a star, give him a gear tier. We're going to be working on the troopers, so invest in him. For the rest of these characters, they're on nodes that we're farming. We're just going to give them stars here at the beginning. Makes it easier for me when I'm farming. Then we're going to go into squads, and we're going to focus on the squads that we know we're working on. Shakti gets her 3rd star. We did take some time in this last week to farm up 80 shards of the ARC Trooper, the 4th Trooper for this 501st team. So we're going to go ahead and get him started, and then we can come back to this team later and work on it. Remember, this clone team is going to be probably the first full relic team that we build on this account. So we're working on it as one of the secondary projects. Of course, the main project right now is still the Geos. We really want to get those Geos all the way up to fully functioning WAT Tambor level, which is 16,500 galactic power each. So we still have to get there. Still intending to relic the spy. So for now, we'll put a little bit of effort into those troopers, and we'll come back to them here in a minute. Here's our spy going to gear 12. We've been working on some of his gear pieces in the background. Even though we didn't have him at gear 12, you can look on Swigo GG and other resources and know what gear you're going to need to get to the relic level. So we just have this finisher piece and some stuff over here for the for one of his left hand pieces. So really not too far off from getting him to relic level. We'd said 3 weeks to relic him, but I really think it's only going to take 2. Now here we look at spy, and he's got the upgrade lit, everything we need to go all the way to gear 12. I know from past experience I don't have to go all the way to gear 12. So I sit here for a while and I think about it, and then you know what, we're just going to go ahead and take him all the way to gear 12. No problem there. And then we still have Sunfac and Brute Alpha to work on. But we're getting there. We're getting there. Here we go back to our troopers. We got a star that we can put on Starck. Get him to 6 stars. Thinking about going and leveling up his skills and doing all that stuff. But at the end of the day, we've got to get back to these clones. So I'm just going to leave the troopers alone for now. And we'll go back to the clone team. Looking at Veers again, same thing, trying to decide if we're going to click that button on Veers. And again, it's definitely a team that we want to build, but we need to invest in these clones first. So we're taking a look over here. There's nothing that we can actually upgrade. So we're going to go into this ARC Trooper now, work up his skills. Then we'll go to the rest of the troopers as well. And start looking at mods. So here's the Zeta for 5s. This allows that when he sacrifices, he gives over his health, protection, speed, and offense stats to the other clones. The offense, health, and protection are nice, but that speed is really what makes this a crazy thing. Once he gives over his offense and basically more than doubles the speed of the rest of the clones, it's a pretty big deal. We'll get Rex going too. We'll commit to some of the Omicrons on Rex. We'll get Echo's skills leveled up. These guys came with the hyperdrive bundle, so they are already partially skilled. So that's nice. It's a little less resources we have to spend. Take a look in here at Shakti, see if there's anything we can do for her mods. Get in here on Rex. We're going to try to make Rex fast. Typically, in a clone team early on, if you can get the first turn, use Rex's middle skill, give everybody else turn meter, get your whole team to take a first turn. Shakti can do the assist on Rex, get him back to full turn meter, let him take another turn. So it gives you quite a few turns ahead of your opponent and lets you get an advantage in the combat. Especially, I intend to use these clones mainly on offense in the early game. Against certain opponents, if they have a certain type of defense that I'm thinking they're going to put down, I may put the clones on defense. But typically use them as an offensive team where I can control the matchup, and the AI is not very smart about 5s in the sacrifice, so they do target other clones and kill them, and then I get the sacrifice off of 5s. On defense, most players know that you have to kill 5s first, so it's not as good of a situation. On Echo here, again, we're just going to put speed mods. Now, if you're saying, well, what's the ideal mods? Why aren't you modding him with offense? So in the early game, I'm just going for a lot of speed mods. We know that for the characters that we want to go fast, we have to have a lot of speed. So in order to get that speed, you have to farm speed mods. And there's a lot of characters like these clones where, sure, there's better mod sets for them, but the speed sets work just fine. With the ARC Trooper, I am trying to get some kind of crit chance, crit damage set going on here. In the end, I have to settle for just crit damage on the triangle and a bunch of crit chance mod sets. So it puts our crit damage at 186%, gives us a crit chance of 53%. Not great. We still have a lot of gear to put on these guys to get their stats up and get their crit chance up and all of that. So we'll work on that over time. But for right now, it's just getting a mod set onto him so he's functional. And that puts mods on Shakti and all 5 of the clones. Still have a lot of characters, of course, that we haven't modded. But the Geos and the clones and the Mon Mothma team, for example. Stuff for the Vader team. They're all at least have mods on them now. Jedi, Ahsoka doesn't have mods yet, so we're going to take a look at mods for Ahsoka as well. Again, just getting basic stuff on these characters to try to make them a little bit better in the Grand Arena. For events and stuff right now, if they're only 5 stars and they really don't have much progress, just putting mods in them doesn't usually get you the next tier in events, because usually you can do just fine in the events at 5 stars, and then you're not 6 stars, so you don't qualify for the events. So we do have Ahsoka at 7 stars, so she qualifies for the events. We got to get mods on her. In the end, we settle for just a bunch of mixed sets. We have some protection and some defense sets here, and we try to get some decent speed substats, and in the end she ends up at 163. It's not great to build Ahsoka as a defensive character. Typically you're going to want offense mods on her, or speed mods are okay too. But yeah, this early in the game, 8 weeks in, we're really lacking all kinds of mods. BTLB Y-Wing, we do have that unlocked now at 2 stars. We can upgrade it to 3 and upgrade it to 4. Now, it seems to me like 4 stars on the BTLB 8 weeks in is pretty good. But then I also notice that we have the Hyena Bomber ready to go at 4 stars. There we take a star on Anakin's ship. We're getting that built up in the background. But here you see we can also activate this Hyena Bomber. So for both of those pilotless ships, I feel like having 80 shards already is statistically ahead of where we should be. But I'll take it. It's nice to have those ships. The Vulture droid we have is almost to its 6th star, so that's good too. That'll help us out. I think that's the last ship that I need to qualify for the ship Omega materials in the level 4, tier 4 fleet challenge. So we're trying real hard to get that ship up to 6 stars and get that closed out. I think I may need Sunfac also, but he's getting close to 6 stars. So that's what we did with the account for the week. Statistics for the week, week 8. We're up to 1.29 million galactic power. We added 50,000. Still just got the 2 relics with Vader and Kylo Ren Unmasked. The spy is coming along nicely. Probably have that next week. 4 Zetas. Mon Mothma, the Geo Brood Alpha, Vader's Merciless Massacre, and now this week we put the Zeta onto 5s for the clone sacrifice. In Squad Arena, we've got this mixed team with Emperor Palpatine, Vader, just some other good stuff that we have. And we're doing pretty well. We're getting top 50. I've gotten top 20 a couple days, but it's not something I can hold on to. Fleet Arena, we've got this home 1 with Silencer 5s and Bigs. We're getting top 10 reliably. Some days I can break into the top 5, but the Geo fleets with their 7-star Geos and their Relic Spies are keeping me out of the top 10 most days. I don't have a good way. I mean, I can deal with Houndstooth a little bit with the Vulture Droid, but the guys who have already got Gear 12 or Relic level Houndstooth are also a problem for me still. So those fleets I'm not doing a great job of beating, but yeah, we'll keep working on it. We'll get our Geo fleet up and running pretty soon. Like I said, we got the characters up, we got the ships at 6 stars. It's just a matter of finishing that out and getting that fleet to pass up our other fleet. Energy plan for next week. Same, we're farming all kinds of ships, and then Piett, Mon Mothma, and Resistance Hero Finn. In fleet, we're doing Anakin's ship, Greef Karga, and then just the Gear 13 pieces. Cantina, we're doing Signal Data. We were going to do Moff Gideon, but like I said, we prioritized that ARC Trooper just to get him started. Then we'll go back to doing a little bit of Moff Gideon next week. Mod Energy, with speed, defense mods, same refresh plan that we've got up to this point. The shop plan, nothing's really changing in the shop plan. We're still slowly building up that Cassian's U-Wing and feeding the Shard Shop with the Cantina. The rest of the stuff, very similar. In the guild store, we're still buying Carbantis. We're working on Starck. We're getting clones out of there when we can. And I also will start picking up some Ewoks. If we build the clones, it makes sense to go toward gas. If we go toward gas, we need C-3PO. So just when I have extra currency, we'll pick up Ewok shards, start getting ourselves ready for that event slowly but surely. All right. Now, for planning out GAC victories early in the game. So if you think about chess or a lot of games, sometimes if you can outguess your opponent, if you figure out what he's up to or she, then it really provides you a huge advantage in playing the game. And sometimes I would even say, if you can figure out what your opponent is doing, it's better than knowing your own strategy. I'm a big fan of games like Magic the Gathering, League of Legends, games like that. And you see sometimes these players just get locked on to their opponents, and it's like they can read their mind on what they're doing next. And when that happens, man, it goes badly for the opponent. So in Grand Arena, it's the same way. So if we can figure out the opponent's likely strategies, then we can, in some ways, build our account to counter those strategies. Obviously, with the breadth of the game and the amount of different teams that people can build, you can't plan for everything. But let's try to think through and see if we can figure out what the opponents might do. Now, oftentimes the opponent's going to have like 1 or 2 good teams, and those 1 or 2 good teams are quite predictable. And if you want to predict those teams, you can simply go into your Squad Arena shard and start looking around at what kind of teams are in Squad Arena. And you can take this as far as you want. You can look at, 100 different placements and just kind of get a feeling and get a trend for yourself. But for the purpose of this video, I'll show you what my Squad Arena shard looks like. And it probably looks like most Squad Arena shards that are at this point in the game. Word of advice, though, don't look at the very top teams. If you look at the top teams, typically those people are in the game spending a lot of real money. And, that early Darth Revan or SLKR or whatever it is that they're building and spending a lot of money to do it, they're going to pass up your bracket in GAC pretty quickly. If you end up fighting one of those people at a low level, then there's just not much you can do. Some people do that. They build an alt account. They're good players already, and you get matched up against them. And they've got like, a million more galactic power at you in Carbonite. So don't worry about those people. Those aren't the people that you're trying to beat. So here we start in my squad, Shard, and 14 through 17, we see a couple Jedi Knight Revens, a Darth Revan, and then a Trooper team. The Troopers with Piett now are actually a valid defense. It's pretty interesting. You can get them going pretty good. Here we have a Relic 9 Darth Vader team. That's interesting. We've got an Iden Versio team for Troopers. Some more Palpatine teams. We've got Kylo Ren Unmasked, some kind of First Order team. Probably somebody who's building straight into an SLKR as their early game concept. Again, another Revan. We've got Shaak Ti here, probably with the clones. Another Vader team. Night Sisters up here, some Jedi, JKR. So again, you're starting to see a trend. The early teams that people build, typically there's a lot of these Empire teams with Palpatine, Vader, Thrawn, those kinds of things. The likelihood that you're going to see that on defense in Grand Arena is 50-50. So some people will take that on offense to try to beat your best team, especially if you have Geos. Most opponents will keep that on offense. But if you don't have Geos, or if you scout them and they put the Empire team on defense, you got to be ready for it. Jedi Knight Revan, I think, is a very popular early team. Built correctly with a Jolee Bindo, it can be very difficult to deal with. First Order with that Kylo Ren Unmasked. He can be a very difficult character to deal with early game because of all the protection and health recovery that he has in his kit. He's a good tank. He's hard to kill. I put him with a few other First Order, and it becomes a pretty nasty thing. You'll see that mostly on defense. I think if you have that Kylo Ren Unmasked and you relic him, then putting him on offense is not necessarily a smart move. So expect to see some of those on defense. Troopers, again, if an opponent builds Troopers, either the Iden Versio version or the standard Troopers, you can expect mostly to see those on offense. Jedi under Bastila, so we talked about the Jedi Knight Revan Jedi, but you'll also see a lot of early game Jedi under the Bastila lead. You'll definitely see Geos, and there'll be General Grievous teams in there for sure. Some other things like clones, Night Sisters, there's all kinds of things that you might see, but this gives you a list of things that you really should be able to logically expect. So then you have to think through, well, if that's what I'm going to see, then what do I have to beat it? So for Empire teams, if you have a faster Empire team, that's pretty much the win for you. If they put their Vader on defense and your Vader is faster, you should be able to win that matchup. Unless something goes horribly wrong, which it shouldn't, you should be able to dominate that matchup by going first. Mon Mothma, I build my Mon Mothma team with tenacity. Talked about that in a few other holocrons, but because the tenacity on that team can get so high, and it's hard to have good stats and good early game potency, that team usually does quite well against debuff teams like the Empire team. They just can't put down enough debuffs to make their gimmick work. Imperial Troopers, again, if you can go faster than your opponent. If the Imperial Troopers go first, you should be able to take them out. And then Padme teams, it is a Zeta heavy team. You need the Zetas on Padme and Ahsoka and Anakin really to make it work. Probably need a tank like General Kenobi, at least start it up and going. But Padme can then turn all of those debuffs into courage stacks and make that a short battle. But you do have to be tanky enough to survive the initial hits. Jedi Knight Revan, the Imperial Troopers do a very good job of beating the early Jedi Knight Revan teams. Jedi Knight Revan teams have the tenacity up buff at the start, which makes them more difficult for a lot of teams to deal with. But at similar GP, the Troopers will take that team apart. Padme, in the same way, JKR can actually be a counter to a Padme team if the Padme team's on defense and you're using the Jedi Knight Revan. But if the Jedi Knight Revan team is on defense, the Padme team can reasonably deal with that. You just got to work your way around to Jolie Bindo and make sure he gets taken care of. The clone team under Shaak Ti, typically the JKR team will often trigger a sacrifice, and then once the sacrifice is in, the clones can deal with the JKR team. First Order, especially if it's a high relic Kylo Ren unmasked, that's pretty difficult to deal with. The bounty hunters with the Mandalorian have a disintegrate skill. The triumvirate with Scion and Nihilus. Nihilus has an instant kill ability as well. And then Jedi Training Rey is very effective at beating that team as long as there's not a Zeta Hux in the same team. If there's a Zeta Hux in the team, then the JTR counter is out. If somebody puts troopers on defense, and again, with Piett and the way that the troopers work, it can very easily be put as a defensive team. So anything faster than the troopers can take out the troopers. But if the opposing trooper team is fast and they put it on defense, it can be really hard to deal with. Qui-Gon Jinn with the Omicron can deal with the troopers even if they're not faster. Again, because the Qui-Gon Jinn thing where the other Jedi can't get killed, a lot of times the troopers will hone in on somebody other than Qui-Gon Jinn and go crazy and can't kill it. If you can't get a kill, they can't get their turn meter, and then the Qui-Gon team will get in there and do what they need to do. The Bastila-led Jedi, again, things like troopers, clones, Padme, Qui-Gon Jinn, it's not too hard to deal with that Bastila team. You just have to have a team that has enough damage to punch through these Jedi and get through that extra protection up they get pretty quickly. If the game goes too long and you're not doing enough damage, then they do have enough damage to make things bad. If you ever drop a battle against the Bastila team, when you come back in, all of that extra protection up is renewed. So if you're fighting a Bastila team, it's very important to get kills rather than do area effect damage, for example. Geos can be beat with Empire, Vader teams, the troopers, and honestly, Geos could be beat with similar or better Geos. That's a matchup that a lot of people take. They just take their Geos against the Geos. General Grievous can be a menace in the early game. If you have an Empire team that's got enough damage, you can take care of Grievous. If you've got Jedi Knight Revan, he's pretty good at that. Clones can do Grievous with the sacrifice, but there is this moment right when you get the sacrifice. If they do have the healing immunity on a couple of your characters, you won't get the extra health and protection from the sacrifice. And if that happens, the match can go the other way and Grievous can take out the clone team. So it's a bit of a dicey matchup. It's not easy to win, but a clone sacrifice team is a good team to use against Grievous early on. It's got a better chance than most teams. So if we just say generally, okay, let's take all of this information we've got and try to compile it into what should I do with my account. What you're going to see is that it becomes a very good idea to build one of each kind of team. So you want a team that's going to go fast, an Empire team with Vader. It makes a lot of sense. You can make Vader a speed build and not a damage build early on. That'll have him going faster than Geos, faster than troopers in some cases, and faster than other similar Vader teams. Then not only does he counter those teams, but by being faster, he can handle a lot of different stuff in Grand Arena. So build the Empire and Vader team, but build Vader as fast as you possibly can in the early game, because the advantage to going first cannot be understated. You'll want to build one dominance team, and I call those teams dominance teams. To me, are teams that go first, have some kind of turn meter gimmick, and never let go of it. Troopers are an example. Clones are an example. Bounty hunters. And somebody's going to point out in the comments, I'm sure, that CLS counters just about everything in the early game. I don't recommend CLS as an early game team just because it's such a broad team to get going. You need bounty hunters to get Chewbacca. You have to wait for Han out of the raids. You got to farm up Chewpio. If you want C-3PO on that team, you have to farm Ewoks. So in order to get the whole CLS team, it's just this massive sequence of stuff that you have to build and do. So I typically don't recommend CLS as one of your first early game teams, but of course, for anyone who knows, they can substitute in. I consider them a dominance team. Han shoots first, gets them a lot of advantages. They've got a lot of turn meter gimmicks, and once they start going, they typically win. The last kind of team that you're going to need is a recovery team. That's going to help you beat other dominance teams. And for me, a recovery team is something that can take a hit and has some kind of recovery mechanics where you can get back health, protection, get your banners back. The best examples I can think of are Padme, Jedi Knight Revan, and Mon Mothma. So Jedi Knight Revan with Jolie Bindo can revive dead characters. He's got healing, protection, recovery on attacks out of turn. Padme... Typically, Padme can't recover protection well enough to get full banners, but the team is super hard to kill, so against some of these comps, like Kylo Ren Unmasked, you can take a Padme team in there. As long as your Jedi Knight Anakin has enough potency to get the healing immunity buff onto Kylo Ren, then you can last long enough to finish that battle off. And then the Mon Mothma team, again, lots of heals, revives, survival mechanisms that even if they do kill a character, you typically just bring it back and still finish with really good banners. So I think if you're planning your account, plan one of each of these teams. You know, the Empire team for Vader, make him fast. A dominance team, whether that's Imperial troopers, clone troopers, bounty hunters, something that's going to go fast and win. And then a recovery team like Padme, JKR, Mon Mothma. So if you have one each of those teams, you should be able to counter almost anything that your early game opponents are going to build. Now, you can't account for somebody who does like Relic Night Sisters or goes straight into Relic Bad Batch. Some players are doing things like that now, but you can't plan for the 1% or the 5% or whatever you want to call it. So if you just plan generally what you'll see, you should be in pretty good shape. All right, so now we've got the early game. We've considered that stuff. Once you start rising up through Bronzium and into Chromium, you're going to have to think about a few of the biggest teams that you're going to face. Darth Revan, once you get Malak in the team, is just a menace on defense. That's very hard to beat. Gas is another character that people go for quite quickly in the game, and he can be virtually impossible to beat unless you have a team that's actually thought about ahead of time and designed to beat Gas. And then, of course, you've got people who build the quick galactic legends, and you have to know how to deal with that. So for those kinds of teams, the Zam Bounty Hunter team so far has proven very good at dealing with a lot of this stuff. But you do have to build bounty hunters. You have to relic them. You have to put the Omicron on Zam. You really have to make a commitment to this team. But once you do, it has the potential to beat Revan and Gas. Can't beat Galactic Legends, but certainly does a good job with the other two major early game defenses. Building a Galactic Legend, of course, solves that problem. On my other alt, my Loquitur account, I built Sith Eternal Emperor quite quickly, and that's how we deal with those teams that we can't otherwise deal with. CLS beats Gas, but not really Darth Revan. Troopers can beat Darth Revan, but not really Gas. And the Bad Batch can provide some interesting options. I don't know the full extent of what my Bad Batch team can do, but so far it looks like they can hold up to a lot of these early game teams. If you get good enough mods and good enough relic levels on them, they're really hard to deal with. and they provide a good defensive or offensive option for you. So think about that, and then as you're building your early game teams, you have to decide if you're going to build like a Zam bounty hunter team and just say, okay, I'm going to commit the resources over there. The bounty hunters have good ships. You're never going to regret relicking a Bosk for the Hound's Tooth. The ships for the Executor are relevant, so the Boba Fett and things like that still make sense. So it can be a very interesting option to build a team like that, and will help you a lot in Grand Arena. So suffice to say that a lot of what I'm talking about can happen as a result of good account building anyway. The idea of having the 3 key teams on offense, a fast team, a recovery team, and a balanced team, it might help you determine your next project. Like if you weren't planning on either Padme or Jedi Knight Revan, think about building one or the other. It also helps you plan out your Omicrons and your placement of Zetas. And you can't go backwards, right? So if you build a bunch of teams and you put on a bunch of Zetas and you put Omicrons in the wrong place, then it becomes really hard to go backwards, and you're just waiting to get those materials again to put them in the right place. So think about this stuff ahead of time, know where you're going to put those materials, and that helps you a lot. That's going to wrap up the Holocron for this week. Thank you all for watching. Remember to hit that like button if you haven't done that already. That helps me, helps the channel. Subscribe, join us over on Discord, and I will see you in the next Holocron.